Hello from Houston. This is Catherine Wintz, your favorite French realtor. This is a series on Houston zip codes, and I have already looked into several of them, so feel free to look them up on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe. I'd love you for it. Now, today, though, I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. Still about Houston, but instead of going zip code by zip code, today we're going to talk about wards. All right, so we're going to be shifting that format a little bit. This is a show about art, food, and real estate in Houston, and I typically do it zip code by zip code. What I'm going to do today is this. I'm going to go over 6 wards. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And for each one of those, I will give you a little bit of real estate, I will give you a little bit of art, and I will give you a little bit of food. Originally, we had 4 wards. And then about 30 years later, the 5th was added. And then about 10 years after that, the 6th ward was added. So now we have 6 wards. And those wards were really designed for political purposes, a little bit like, a voting district type situation. Downtown was originally part of every ward. So basically, all 6 wards originated from downtown, and there was a little bit of downtown in each one of them. The city maps continued to refer to the wards until about 1920s or so, and then they just dropped the wards recognition, if you would. And they started favoring geographic locations that were identified by landmark like parks, universities, or bayous. And we're going to talk a little bit about the bayous. So let's start with the first ward. The first ward is basically where Houston was born. That was the epicenter, the first epicenter for business. And it was also the first port for Houston. Basically, there is a place in north downtown that's called Allen's Landing, and you need to look that up. It's actually quite cool. This is where it all started, pretty much, in the 1800s. The first ward has the art district in it, so there's a lot of art in the first ward. And I talk about that in other segments about the downtown area and then 77007. But basically, the first ward has the art district in it, and along with many nonprofit organizations. So it's a very, very high cultural point in Houston. As far as the food is concerned, I would encourage you to go to Stanton's. Stanton's is a little hole in the wall of a restaurant, which I love. I do like really good environment, really good service, really good food. That's what I look for in a restaurant where I'm going to spend more than $30 or $40. But I got to tell you that Stanton's has none of those things. You go to the counter to get your burger, but the burgers are so good that if I had to give a rating to a burger, I would say it's very, very high. From 1 to 5, I would say it's a 4.95. How's that? It's a very, very good burger. The fries are amazing. You need to get the Italian ones that have the shredded Parmesan on top and some herbs on top of the fries. Unbelievable. Really good. And then off of Houston Avenue, there is also Café Brussels. If you like Belgian food. Now, Belgian food is about French fries. Why are they called French fries? I have no idea. They're not French. They're Belgian. Belgian fries and mussels. On the menu, you have 6, 7, or 8 different ways that you can have mussels. I would encourage you to get the mussels that are mussel marinière, which is just with white wine and onion. That's the best way to eat mussels, says the French woman. So, you can take that or leave it. But I know my mussels because I'm from the north of France, which is really close to Belgium. So I ate a lot of mussels growing up, okay? I know mussels. Now, let's talk about the second ward. El Segundo Barrio. That's also how it's called. And there's a reason for it, because the second ward is predominantly Hispanic, okay? There's a Houston Maritime Museum at the corner of Jensen and Navigation Boulevard in the second ward. And there's also a very large boulevard, navigation boulevard. And along it, on Sundays, there is a farmer's market, and it's actually quite lovely. So you might want to go and check that out. Just a block away from the Marcus Farmers Market, there is the original ninfas. Now you cannot miss that. And I know that from one segment to the next, and I hope you are watching all of them, right? Because you will notice, if you do, that I talk about certain things over and over and over again. And there's a reason for it. The ninfas that's on navigation is probably the best ninfas in town. So you need to go and check that out. There are a lot of townhomes in that area, and that's a fairly new thing. In the last 10 years or so, there's been a little bit of revitalization. But there is a section of that particular area, the second ward, between I-10 and Navigation Boulevard, that's got lots of clusters of townhomes, and they are fairly inexpensive. So if you want to be really close to downtown, but you want something that's fairly recent, that's definitely one neighborhood that you need to look into. Third ward, I'm just going with this. Third ward, so one of the original four wards, it's now just a fraction of its original size. It's actually, it's kind of smallish right now. But the third ward, where the second ward was predominantly Hispanic, the third ward is predominantly African American. And so there's a lot of history there as well. And there is a really nice park there off of Emancipation Boulevard. It's called the Emancipation Park. So the third ward is where in the 50s and 60s, there was quite a bit of civil rights action going on there. So once again, lots of history. The Emancipation Park is a 10-acre green space that was actually purchased by former slaves in the 1870s in a way to celebrate the end of slavery in Texas. So kind of nice to know. In the third ward, you have two universities. You have Texas Southern University, TSU, and then you have U of H, University of Houston, and we call it U of H. So two large universities in that part of town. This is also where Herman Park is. This is also where the zoo is. So again, the third ward has lots of stuff going on. The type of dwelling that you're going to have there, it's going to be mostly single family. There's a little bit of townhome action, but not so much. Art in the third ward. Well, again, quite a bit of art. There is the Ensemble Theater, which is on Main Street. Their mission, if you look up their website, and I'm going to read this one, their mission is to preserve African-American artistic expression and enlighten, entertain, and enrich a diverse community. They have really very nice shows in that theater, so you may want to look that up. And then there's the Miller Outdoor Theater. Now, that is a very cool place. Of course, in a city where it's 100, 110 degrees in the summer, it's not so much fun in the summer, but the rest of the year is fantastic. It's an outdoor theater, and it is celebrating this year its 100th anniversary. So this is a big deal. Very, very nice place to go and catch a show. Their performance schedule is very varied and very, very interesting. In the third ward, you have the Project Row houses. It's an area that covers about 5 city blocks, and there are 39 structures that are being used as home base for a variety of community events and programs. So Project Row houses, you may want to take a look at that as well. Food. Well, I've mentioned Nancy Hustle's in a previous segment. Not to say that this is the only restaurant that's in the third ward. It is not, but it's a very, very nice place. You might want to take a look at it. There are a lot of restaurants that are opening up in these wards, in those areas around downtown, that are really worth checking into. I'm not going to tell you that they all have the same quality environment and food, but for the most part, the one thing to remember about food in Houston is this. We are spoiled rotten. If a restaurant doesn't deliver, and I'm not talking about delivery in a car. If a restaurant doesn't deliver good food, good prices, good ambiance, that restaurant doesn't last, period. So for the most part, if a restaurant has been around for more than 2, 3, 5 years, that in itself could be an indication that what they are offering is worth checking into. So I would encourage you to really expand the scope of your list of restaurants to try. All right, I'm going to take a break from the wards, and I'm going to talk about the bayous. So we have actually 4 bayous in this town. We have Buffalo, Bayou, White Oak, Bayou, Braze, Bayou. And then we have Sims Bayou. And for the most part, it's Buffalo Bayou with 3 tributaries of sorts. And I will just give you a little bit of information about Buffalo Bayou because this is the largest one. So Buffalo Bayou starts around Highway 6 to the west of Houston, goes all the way down to the Ship Channel. It's 52 miles long, and it's what they call a slow river. And it's also one of our Houston landmark. There's a lot of stuff going on alongside Buffalo Bayou. And I will tell you a little bit about it. So this is where the settlement began in the Houston downtown area, right? Which makes sense. I mean, typically when you have an area of a piece of land and you're trying to develop it and you try to attract people to come and live there, it helps to have a body of water of some sort. So this is pretty much how it started in Houston. All the development, like the Heights, the downtown area, basically started alongside the shores of Buffalo Bayou. At a time where it had fresher water, I guess, because right now the water is not so fresh, but neither here nor there. So Buffalo Bayou organization, there is a very, very strong organization that takes care of a stretch of Buffalo Bayou that's only 10 miles long. It goes from Shepherd Drive, yeah, it is a drive, all the way to the Turning Basin near the port. So it's about, 10 miles long. And actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me take that back. It's not 10 miles long. It's a 10-mile square area. So it's way more than 10 miles. I'm glad I caught that. So there is an organization that basically takes care of the maintenance of it, organizes things that you can do around the bayou. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do. And by the way, you can volunteer for the bayou organization. So I'm thinking about doing that soon at some point. So the Bayou Park. We have a gorgeous park in that stretch, basically between Shepherd and downtown. It's called the Bayou Park. And that park opened up in 2017, 2015. It was damaged in 2017 by Harvey, so they had to go back and fix it up a little bit. But the opening of Bayou Park was 2015. It's a gorgeous park. There's so much going on there. It's unbelievable. For one thing, you can rent a canoe and you can float on it, which is kind of nice. So they organize all kinds of different things, with that. The other thing that you can do is that if you're into skating, like skateboarding, there is a 30,000 square foot skate park closer to downtown within the park. There is a 2-acre dog park, which I'm using with my German Shepherd, and he loves it. There's a large water spot, which, of course, he spends half of his time in the water, the Don dog, but he loves it. So so that's very cool, and I need to go and check that out, and I haven't yet. There is a 1926 cistern. It was built in 1926. It is no longer a cistern because they found in 2007 a leak in it that they were not able to repair. So it's now, I'm going to say more or less empty. There's still a little bit of water at the bottom of it, but it's they tour it. You can actually tour that cistern, and it's really, really kind of cool. What else do we have? Oh, well, we have bats. Yes. So there is a bridge, the Wall Bridge. And under the Wall Bridge, there's a colony of an estimated 250,000 bats. And those are very specific bats. Let me look it up. They are Mexican free-tailed bats. And every night at sunset, they come out. to do what bats do well best, which is eat mosquitoes. So they go out, and it's amazing. It's like a cloud of bats, and you should see how many people come day in and day out, no matter what the weather. They go on the platform. There's a little platform, and you can actually watch the bats take flight. So it's kind of cool. So lots to do there. All right, so after all this Bayou action, let's go back to the wards. Just 3 more that I would like to very quickly explore with you. The 4th ward. I did a segment on the 4th ward, and there's, again, so much history there. In the 4th ward, you have Freedmanstown. And Freedmanstown is basically a small community that was established around 1865 when freed slaves from Texas and Louisiana basically developed that area and built up a community. Lots of history there. Not recent because it started in the 70s, but definitely efforts of preserving their heritage that's there. There's so many of the original structures that were destroyed up to the 1970s, but now there is a preservation effort that's underway, and that is doing quite well. There are also 7 UNESCO sites in that very tiny little neighborhood of the 4th ward, and that's pretty amazing. So this is something that you might want to check into and take a look at. Now, of course, the 4th ward originally encompassed a much larger area, like Montrose is in it, potentially upper part of the museum district is in it as well. But for the most part, when we talk about the 4th ward, and we still talk about that one, in Houston, we are thinking Freedmanstown. That's what the 4th ward represents for us. There is a museum there. It's called the Rutherford Yates Museum. And again, this is where you go if you want to get more information about what was going on in that particular part of town and all the history that goes with it. And you can tour Freedmanstown. And I've done that a few months back, and I thought it was really interesting. There are so many things that you have. Really, you have to have a guide point out, what they are, what the signification is, and so forth. It was really fascinating. For 2 hours, we did that. The food in the 4th ward, well, outside of Montrose, which has a bustling nightlife and lots of many good options for restaurants. Closer to the 4th ward, Freedmanstown, there is a stretch of street there that's called Gray, the very beginning of West Gray. And there are a lot of really good restaurants. My 2 favorite there would be Cyclone and Naya. There are several locations, but that's one that's actually quite lovely. Mexican food. Cyclone and Naya was actually a professional wrestler. So you can learn about that when you go to the restaurant. And then there is Oporto, which is a Portuguese restaurant. And well, that's the thing. We don't have that many Portuguese restaurants in this town. So if you like that kind of food, this is where you need to go, and it's easy to get to. The 5th ward. We're almost done with the wards. All right. So the 5th ward was carved out of the 1st and the 2nd ward. And remember, there were 4 wards originally, and then they added, a couple of them. Historically, it was populated by the working class, people that worked at the ship channel, and also people that worked in the factories that were in the 2nd ward. So the 5th ward is kind of north of I-10 and kind of goes up northeast from there. Let me tell you what's in the 5th ward, even though nobody calls it the 5th ward anymore. The St. Arnold's Brewery, which happens to be maybe not the largest, but the oldest brewery in Texas. So that's kind of nice. They have year-round brews. They have seasonal brews. I don't like beer, so I can't relate really. But for people who like beer, I got to tell you, this is a big deal. As a matter of fact, I'm going to organize a little get-together there this month for different people. Neither here nor there. I'm digressing. So another really cool venue for entertainment is the White Oak Music Hall. It's really nice. I've never been, okay? Full disclosure, I haven't been yet to the music hall, the White Oak Music Hall. It's off of North Main, close to 45 North. It's actually very impressive. Take a look at that website, and they have mostly concerts, but they also do all kinds of different things, and you can do private events there as well. So that's the fifth ward. Okay, sixth ward. So we've talked about the wards. Nobody really talks about the fifth or the second anymore, but we still talk about the first, the third, the fourth, and the sixth. Okay, those are still very much in people's mind. So the sixth ward. The six wards were carved out of the northern part of the original fourth ward in 1876. And what I just realized as I was working on this is that the sixth ward basically covers the entire Washington corridor. And that was my very first segment of this series on 77007. Washington corridor is where I live. This is where I live. And when I say where I live, this is where I do just about everything. I live there. My dentist is there. My doctor is there. My favorite shops are there. Yeah, anyway, I'm a 77007 kind of person. But the sixth ward, what's interesting about it is that within it, there is a little neighborhood that was basically renamed the Old Sixth Ward. And this is where Mecca is. This is also where the Glenwood Cemetery is. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a second. This is also where you can find the most fully intact Victorian homes in the entire city of Houston. So it's not in the Heights, it's actually in the sixth ward. So that's kind of interesting. In my 77007 episode, I was telling you about how amazing that sixth ward area is, because you've got Memorial Park on one end, you've got downtown on the other, you have I-10 to the north, and you have Memorial in the Bayou on the south. I mean, how much better can it get? Glenwood Cemetery, I'm going to tell you real quick about famous people that were buried there. Howard Hughes is buried there. Jean Tierney, I'm not sure I'm saying this correctly, but she was definitely a prominent actress in the 50s and 60s, maybe. And then there is Glenn McCarthy, who was an oil tycoon. And if you remember the movie Giant with James Dean, apparently that movie was inspired by Mr. McCarthy. And then Dr. Denton Cooley is also buried there. And Dr. Cooley is the surgeon who performed the first artificial heart implant. So that's a big deal. And other major Houston powerhouses are buried there. So Glenwood Cemetery is also a gorgeous, gorgeous cemetery. It's I know not everybody is into, walking cemeteries, but it's really a very nice place to take a leisurely stroll in. It's really quite lovely. Oh, and last but not least, food in the sixth ward. And again, I can talk about that a little bit more, because that's where I live. And urban eats. I have mentioned the flight of biscuits. I know that seems a little bit strange, but they have a flight of biscuits that comes with a flight of spreads. And I got to tell you, this is amazing. I mean, as biscuits go, and I love biscuits, by the way. I mean, that's something that I really, really enjoy. We don't have biscuits of that kind, at least. We've got different kinds of biscuits in France, and these biscuits are amazing, absolutely amazing. On a scale of 1 to 5, they are 6.5. Take my word for it. And then there is Lorenzo. So we were talking about ninfas, and we were talking about the Lorenzo family. Well, Lorenzo's, it's a restaurant that happens to be a block away from my house, so needless to say, I go there often. I'm on a first-name basis with the wait staff. That's a good indication of how often I go there. Prime rib. Oh, my gosh, prime rib. And their shrimp and grit is also very good there. The wine list is good, too, and the service is impeccable. So I would definitely encourage you to go see Lorenzo's. I love Japanese food. I was introduced to Japanese food when I first came to the States in the 80s. Miyako on Washington is still, and I tried them all, is still my favorite. When it comes to prices versus consistency of the food, the service, it's the best Japanese restaurant in town, I think. And then last but not least, Federal Grill. Are you into whiskeys? They have a list of whiskeys that span 4 or 5 or 6 pages. I'm not into whiskeys, but I find that pretty impressive. I mean, if you really are into it. And the food is very good. I love their bone marrow. That's really, really good stuff. Good service, good place. Love it. Thank you for being with us and for allowing me to take you on a tour of the wards in Houston. Don't hesitate to check us out again as we explore more areas of Houston. We love Houston. Until then, thank you and au revoir.